Hi everyone, this video will show you how to quickly get up and running in PowerPoint. Now I have to stress you don't need to use PowerPoint for your presentation, but it's easy to use as you saw in this morning's class, and hopefully this video will give you the basics, give you the kind of the rudimentaries, the fundamentals of actually slapping together a quick presentation in PowerPoint. And you'll find that if you have a PowerPoint presentation, the presentation itself will be easier. It'll just take some pressure off you. Once you started PowerPoint, and I have to stress you start the desktop, the application version of PowerPoint and not the web version of it. I noticed that some of you had started the web version of it, and you can use it, but it's just not quite as easy or as fully featured as the desktop version. Here I've started the desktop version, and I have, this looks very similar to Word. In fact, we have our home screen here, which is the screen that I'm on at the moment. We have a new button here, which will let me create a new presentation, a new blank presentation, or a new presentation from a template. And finally, we have the open button, which will allow me to open an existing presentation if I've already selected one, or sorry, if I've already created and saved one. But I haven't done that yet, so I'm going to go back to home and I'm going to click on blank presentation. And I've now got a blank presentation open on the screen in front of me. You may see this design ideas pane opening up here on the right hand side. This is PowerPoint suggesting to you some themes, a visual theme that you can apply to your presentation. I'd recommend just getting rid of this. Just click on the X button up here on this pane to close it down. You're always going to have this slide when you create a brand new blank presentation in PowerPoint. This is known as a title slide, an introductory title slide. Here is where you would actually click to add the title of your presentation. So I'm going to click in the main box here, and I'm going to type my presentation. And underneath it we have a box which says click to add subtitle. So a subtitle is kind of like a title which tells you about the main title. It just expands a little bit, if you like, on the main title. So if I click down here and I say this presentation is about, I'm going to say Fleetwood Mac. There. And in fact, what I'll do is I'll change the title my presentation now, because you can change any of this text at any time. It would make more sense, obviously, to have the presentation have a slightly more telling title than my presentation. So I'll left click up here again. You can see the cursor is blinking. I'll delete what's in there and I'll type in a history of Fleetwood Mac. There. So now when the presentation starts to run, and we'll see this very shortly, this is the very first slide that will appear, and it tells people exactly what the presentation is going to be about. It sets it up nicely. So in the next section, what we'll do is we'll look at how to add new slides to this, and then we'll see how to start adding text and images and so on. And then we'll also look at how to actually run the slideshow. So I'll see you in the next section for that. Hi everyone, welcome back. In the previous video we saw how to quickly create a brand new blank presentation in PowerPoint and how to add in some text for our main title, and also in the subtitle box underneath we saw that we could type in just a brief expansion of what the presentation is going to be about. You can change this text at any time. Just click on the text and you can start deleting and start typing in new stuff. If you've made a spelling mistake, for instance, or if you just want to change the title. And I'm going to actually expand this subtitle, and I'm going to say this presentation is about the history of rock band Fleetwood Mac. All right, just to make it a little bit more explanatory. Now what we want to do is add a new slide, because at the moment this slideshow only has one slide. It wouldn't be much of a slideshow. So we want to add a new slide. And there are two ways you can do this. There are a couple of ways you can do it, but I'll show you the two easiest ways. The first way is to go up to the Home tab. You'll probably be on the Home tab already from when you started PowerPoint. This is very similar to Word. We have tabs up here on the top of the screen. We have Home, Insert, Design, and so on. And then underneath we have the ribbon toolbar. And remember from our Word days, when you click on a tab, the contents of the ribbon toolbar beneath change to reflect the tools that are under that tab. So I'll left click on Home again. And in the slides group, remember these groupings of tools together, the name of the group is always in the bottom center of each grouping of tools. Over in the slides group, we have a new slide button. Now don't click on the down arrow, because you'll get different kind of confusing options connected to the new slide. Just click on the top part of the new slide button, and that will quickly add a new slide for you. That's one way of adding a slide. I'm just going to delete this slide, which I'll show you how to do shortly as well, and do that again. Left click once on the new slide button and the new slide will appear over here in the left hand side. That's one way of doing it. The second way you can do it is to go over here to the left-hand side. This is known as the slide preview pane. It gives you a preview of the slides that are in your slideshow. And then this main part of the screen is actually where you view your slides. A second way of adding a new slide is to simply right-click on the gray section. Don't click on a slide itself, although you can do that. But right-click on the gray section and select New Slide. And that will do exactly the same as clicking on New Slide here. So either option that suits you. Some people prefer to just click on New Slide up here. Some people like to click over here, right-click over here, and go to New Slide. Either way, you will get a brand new slide. When you insert a new slide using either of those two options, it's going to look a little bit different to the first slide, which had this big title box here and then a smaller subtitle box. Every other slide that you add using the new slide button or method, or using the right click method, is going to be what's known as a content slide. And that simply means it's going to be the main body of your presentation. All of the kind of the meat and bones of your presentation are going to be in these content slides. And every content slide is going to have a title, because you want to give people an idea of what's on this slide. And then you're also going to have the box down here where you actually type the main items or points for your slide. Now remember, in the class we saw that you try to limit it to about 5 points per slide. So let's type in a title here. I'll type in introduction. So that's my title for this slide. And now down here I'm going to type in 5 points, which will set up exactly what is going to be done for this presentation and for this slide in particular. Now we look at how to add some information to the new slide that we've created. We have an introduction heading up here, and we have our main text box down here in which we place our items, basically our points that we're going to put in on each slide. You can see a bullet in front of this one, which means that the list has automatically been created for you. So I'm just going to literally type in item 1. You can imagine you can type as much information as you want for each point, but it's a good idea usually to try and limit it to a couple of sentences, 2-3 sentences at the most, because people aren't going to be able to read too much stuff. And don't forget, it's not just about you reading from the PowerPoint presentation, it's also about you talking to the audience. So you can type as much or as little as you want for each slide. And I'm going to press the enter key, and we go on to our second point. And again, we have a bullet in front of it because the list is already set up for us. Try to keep your sentences as short as possible. Possible. Enter again. Try to keep the information on each slide short. Remember, usually about 5 points per slide. And then finally, try to keep animations and other effects as simple as possible. And that's it. You could obviously keep on going. If we got to the bottom of this box, the text up here would get smaller and smaller to try and, because PowerPoint will try and accommodate as much text as you put into the box. That's another good reason why it's really not a good idea to put a whole bunch of points on each slide, because the text gets very small and it's just going to be too small for people to read. So that's a very, very easy and very, very short presentation, if you like, on actually how to put stuff into a presentation. In the next section, I'm going to show you how to add images, and I'll show you how to add an animation for each point. In the previous section, we saw how to add points to each slide. Now we're going to see how to add some images. I'm going to add a new slide by, again, going over here. You've got a couple of ways of adding a new slide. But I'm going to go over here, right-click under the existing slide number 2, and go to New Slide. And now we have a new slide which has exactly the same structure as this slide. In other words, we've got a box up here for the title of the slide, and we've got a box down here as well as we had in the slide number 2 for our points. So I'm going to say the band was formed in 1969. And again, I'm just going to type in a title here. It's always a good idea to type in a title for each slide that you have. History of the band. I'm just going to type in 1 point, and then I'm going to look for an image. And the way we insert an image is we go to the Insert tab at the top of the screen, and we have a Pictures tool in the Images group. If you click on the Pictures tool, you've got three devices. Insert pictures from this device. So if you've got a photo on your computer, you can click on that. That will bring up a dialog box, and you can then browse to wherever the picture is and insert it that way. The second option is to go for stock images. Don't worry too much about those. For the class, we don't need to worry about royalties or anything like that. But if you were putting out something public and you wanted to make sure that images were covered by a certain copyright, then you could go to stock images. But as it says here, premium content means that you have to pay, so we'll certainly ignore that. And then finally we'll go down to online pictures. Online pictures is going to bring up the Bing image search tool, just like I did in Microsoft Word, and I'm going to type in exactly what I'm looking for up here. So I'll type in Fleetwood Mac and press the enter key and there it is. I'm going to go with the first image that I see. I'm going to click on insert, and the image is going to be downloaded and inserted. Now, as you can see, the picture is far too big. So what I need to do is click on one of the resizing handles from the top right corner, or the top left corner, or the bottom right corner and the bottom left corner. You can do it that way as well. Careful if you're doing it from the side and from the top like this, because what will happen is you'll change the aspect ratio of the picture, and it might start up looking, or might end up looking squashed or stretched like that, which is not a good look. So do it from the corners and you'll have a nice proportional resizing. Then you can place your image anywhere on the page that you want to. Then we go back in and we'll say the original lineup consisted of. You can right click on any words that you misspell and PowerPoint will fix it for you. And you get the idea. We can add in item 3, item 4, and so on, item 5. So it's very easy to do. So when you're inserting an image, just go to Insert, Pictures, Online Pictures, and then type in the name of the thing that you're looking for. And that image, when you double click on it, then when you find it, will be downloaded to your computer, and then you can then move the image around like this, and you can resize the image too. All right, that's inserting an image. Now, just in case you wanted to, because as I said at the beginning, if I was to run this the slideshow, when you run the slideshow, this is what you'll see. The second we go on to the second slide, all of the points are displayed. What we want to do is to have each one of these points appear on screen. That's what I'm going to show you how to do in the next section by including what's known as an animation for each element. We saw in the previous video how to insert an image. Very easy to do. We just click on the Insert tab and then we go to the Images group and we click on Pictures and we go to Online Pictures, and the Bing Online Pictures tool pops up, and then we type in the name of whatever it is that we're interested in looking for, and when we find an image we double click on it to insert it, and then we saw that we could resize the image very easily. Do it from the corners because it'll be easier to keep the proportion in scale, and we can also move the image around by clicking in the middle of it, holding the mouse button down and dragging the image around. Now in this section I'm going to show you how to, you don't need to do this, but as we saw when we ran the presentation, all of the points appear on the slide together. What you might want to do is you might want each point to appear when you click the mouse button so that you can talk a little bit about a point before you introduce another point. It's very easy to do. I'm going to go to the second slide and I'm going to left click at the end of the first point to select it, just like you'd select text in a Microsoft Word document, and I'll click on Animations and I'll choose from any one of these animations in the animation group. You can see there's an animation group or library here. And when you left click on one, it gives you a little preview of what the animation will look like. So fly in, it appears to fly up from the bottom of the screen, float in, split, wipe, shape. There are more of them as well. If you click on this more button here in the bottom right hand corner of the animation library, you can see there are tons more of them. Now, don't get too obsessed with this. There are lots of very flashy ones that you can do. I'm just going to choose zoom for that one, and you can see that the number 1 has now appeared beside it, which means that of all the animations on this slide, that there's only one, this is the first one that's going to happen when I click the mouse button. I'm going to select the second one now, so the second point, and I'm just going to very quickly apply an animation to each one of these points, or each one of these items in my list. That's all I'm doing. I'm clicking and dragging at the end, and I'm choosing a different animation. So you can see I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 beside these. So that means that when I come to this slide, these animations will happen in this order. Let's have a look at it. Let's start the slideshow, which I'll be showing you how to do shortly. And let's go on to the next slide. Now, we don't see any of the 5 points. We only see the heading because I didn't apply an animation to the heading. Normally, when I would click the mouse button now, I would go on to the next slide. But because there are animations on this slide, it means that the first animation is going to happen when I press the mouse button. There's item 1. I can talk about item 1 then for a minute or two. And then when I'm ready to move on to the second item, there you go. And click again. And we see the third item. Click again, we see the fourth item, and then finally we click for the 5th time and we get the 5th and last item in our list. Now when I click, I'm going to go on to the next slide, and I can do the same thing with the next slide as well. I can simply select the items in my list and apply an animation to them by going to animations and then selecting any of the animations. If you want to delete any of the animations, if you've decided that you don't want to have animations in your slideshow, you can simply left click on the button which has the number for the animation, and you can press the delete key like that. So I've just deleted the 5th one. I'll apply another one to it now, grow and turn. And that's it. That's all there is to applying animations. You can also apply an animation to an image. So for instance, I've clicked on the image here and I'm going to select wheel. And now when I start my slideshow, go on to, I have to click through the animations now on the second slide. And notice that the third slide, I didn't apply any animations to these 5 items, but I did to the image, which is why I can't see the image. But when I left click on the mouse, the image appears using the animation that I specified. So, very easy to do. The last thing we'll look at, this will just take a couple of minutes, is how to actually run your slideshow. We'll just pretend that we've got a lot more slides in here than we currently do. Remember, your slideshow, your presentation, in fact, is 5 to 10 minutes max, okay? So you're not going to need an awful lot of slides. They're really just more of an aid for what you're doing and for what you're talking about to the group. But you can have, I would say, I roughly estimated it at maybe a minute per slide. So if you had like 5 slides, that would be more than enough. We don't need a whole bunch of information on either of the slides either, or on any of the slides either. Just briefly, if you wanted to move the slides around, you can do this by clicking and dragging. So if you decided, actually, no, I want this slide above this slide, you can click and drag, left click and drag, and you can move, release the mouse button then when the slide is where you want it to be. You can also delete a slide if you decide, oh, actually, no, I don't want that there. You can left click once on a slide and press the delete key, and that will delete your slide. I'll just undo that. So now we need to know, how do you actually run the slideshow? Well, when you run the slideshow, what's going to happen, a couple of things are going to happen. First of all, it's going to change to a full screen, and you're going to be then in charge of actually advancing the slide one slide at a time. So there are a couple of ways of actually starting the slideshow. I think the easiest way of doing it is, for all of you, just in case you've, I know some of you have laptops and the function keys are mapped differently, and we've seen that before. If you click on slideshow and then left click on from beginning, you can ignore this slide or this pane, always use subtitles. If it pops up for you, you can click on the X to close it down. You can ignore that. But if you click on the slideshow tab and over in the start slideshow group, just click on from beginning. And what that will do is it will play the slideshow from the beginning. So let's give it a go. I'm going to click on from beginning. I have a slightly different setup here in my view. You can ignore the view that I have here. You should see just a whole screen should be taken over with your slideshow. And then I'm going to click through. So left click once, left click again, and that is exactly what we're going to see on your slideshow. And at any point in time, you can stop the slideshow by pressing the escape key on your keyboard, like that. So let's do that again. We go to slideshow, we go to from beginning, and we can simply advance one slide at a time. And if you decide then that you're on slide number, let's say 3, click through the animations to get to slide 3, and you want to go back to slide 2, you can do it a couple of ways. You can right click and you can go to previous, which will go to the previous slide, or you can press the arrow key on your keyboard. The left and right arrow key will take you backwards and forwards a slide at a time as well. And that's it, everyone. That's pretty much all you need to know for creating a very simple presentation in PowerPoint.